This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, brought to you by the Iowa Soybean Association. Your daily recap of the information that affects Iowa's farmers, producers, and consumers, right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning broadcast team of Dustin Hoffman and Riley Smith. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Dustin Hoffman.
Well, good day and welcome to Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Dustin Hoffman. We're at day 2 of the World Pork Expo in Des Moines here on Thursday, June the 9th. We thank you for joining us. Coming up in today's program, I had the chance to talk with Iowa Ag Secretary Mike Naig here at World Pork Expo. We'll also take a look at that ag weather outlook for you. But first, let's run down the markets. It's time now for the Ag Matters PM Closing Market Summary, your source for market analysis and settlement prices from the day's trade in Chicago, courtesy of the folks at agmarket.net. With Jim McCormick once again of agmarket.net. Jim, what did we see out there in the markets as they closed?
I'll tell you what we saw today was a lot of volatility in the spreads, old crop, new crop spreading, specifically in the corn and beans. If anybody looked at the market today, they will definitely see the dynamic. The July corn, the July beans were sharply higher today. The new crop grains were up a little bit on the beans. Corn actually ended up down a little bit. So the market is really starting to kind of struggle to get grain out of the producers' hands, specifically the old crop, and hence that bull spreading, it believes what's really accelerated today's trade.
You know, and we talked about that yesterday with the fact that basis prices in some areas are very high because they're trying to get grain so they can fill those contracts, and elevators need to get that done. And why would the farmers still be holding on to it when the prices are even that good at the basis level?
Well, I think part of it right now is, we're down to what the industry likes to call, Dustin, is the they're gambling bushels right now. If you look at where this grain is held, and such in the Western Corn Belt, the crop didn't get off to the best to start. You've dealt with some hail issues on the beans specifically. They had to be replanted due to some frost issues. So the customers that have got the grains that are left, they're willing to risk it to get a little bit further peak in the summertime. You've got a pretty big heat dome that's going to set in early next week. I don't think it's going to do a whole lot of damage to the crop this early in the year. A lot of people like a little bit of dry weather in June anyway to root that crop down. But if that heat would kind of retrograde down back to the west and then come back in with even more force in July, it could cause this problem. So the producers that have some old crop grain left, they're pretty much willing to let it ride, per se, to see that weather peak. So now you're seeing the market as well as the bases do as much as they can to pull it to market, pull that grain out of the farmers' hands and into the cash market where they need it for the crush margins for the beans, as well as the export and ethanol demand for the corn.
So looking at it from the elevators side and the market side of it still being sitting there, and obviously they know it's still sitting there. I mean, what is the end result for them if they're just holding on and waiting?
Well, right now, what's the end result is, you've got to do something to entice that producer to move the grain. And part of it is strengthening the basis. So when the basis goes up, obviously it makes the price a little bit more attractive. The other thing to do is widen the spreads. And like that July SEP corn spread kind of widened out today to about a 45 cent premium July over September. So what that's essentially doing, Dustin, is it's telling a producer, hey, I'm going to give you 45 cents more for the corn today than what I'm going to give you for September delivery. So if you choose to hold on to that corn past this delivery time frame, I'm going to penalize you by 45 cents. And then you're going to have to hope that as we get in the latter part of summer, the market will rally enough to make up for that inversion of the market. So that's what the market's doing right now. Same thing in the beans. By essentially bringing the premium up on the front month to the back month, it's essentially going to, economically, it's telling me, producers, move the grain. If you want to play the weather play into the summertime, that's what options are for.
All right. And what other things are the markets keeping a close eye on here as we wrap up today?
Well, you look at the wheat market, did a whole heck of a lot of it. And, but something we need to keep an eye on is, there's a lot of stories out the last couple of days how the Turkish and the Russians were trying to work together to try to come up with a corridor to get grain out of the Ukraine. As I talked before and told you before, I did not think that was going to happen. And as it looks like, nothing came out of those discussions at this point in time. So the world is still going to have to do without that Ukrainian grain. There's also reports that Putin's actually kind of threatening to withhold some exports as well until he sees some sanctions relief. So essentially the world supply of grain just tightened up a little bit more. I don't know if the market is really reflecting that just yet, but it's something that could be very, very bullish if we continue to not be able to get the grain out of the Ukraine. And if for some reason our crop continues to stumble, especially if this heat does stick around, not just in the latter part of June, but in July and August, this market is setting up for some very volatile fireworks as it goes in motion to try to ration demand.
All right, and going to the livestock side of things, Jim, what did we see in those cattle and hog markets?
Overall, the cattle market earlier in the day, they kind of backed off. The hog market, obviously, where you're at, was really disappointing. It really got hit hard today. The weights are coming up. Seasonally, they should be going down, so that's a little bit negative. They're also very concerned about demand. Exports are nothing that great. And then you throw in the higher feed costs. It was just kind of a rough day for the protein market. Tomorrow, we'll be watching for the new inflation numbers that come out. I believe it's the CPI numbers. And, what you're going to see there is probably inflation still running red hot, which will be viewed a little bit negative to the stock market, which could be a little bit negative too for the demand for the protein market.
And of course, as you mentioned, tomorrow we have that WASDE report coming out. I mean, when I always ask you to look in your crystal ball, what do you think we're going to see?
I think on that report, when it's all said and done, it's going to be relatively minute changes. They could raise the yield a little bit, but historically they don't on the corn. I think the exports should be raised, but my guess is they're going to hold back a little bit longer, maybe to July. We could see a slight increase in the bean export demand, but yield should be left unchanged. So in general, we're going to look for relatively minute changes. And then what we're really going to do is go back to watching three things. The potential demand from China. There's been rumors that China's been buying some grains. No confirmation of it yet. That's one. Second thing we'll be watching is weather, obviously. With this intense heat coming in, the question is, does it stick around for how long? And then lastly, we're still got to keep an eye on what's going on in Ukraine right now, because if the market really gets fearful that they can't get grain out of that part of the world, it could add a little bit of panic buying into our markets.
All right, Jim. Well, a lot of great information as always. And if folks want to talk about their marketing strategies, how do they get in touch with the folks at agmarket.net?
I think the best way to do it, Dustin, is go to agmarket.net and sign up for our research.
All right, Jim. Thanks so much for the information. We'll talk to you again real soon.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
And that again was Jim McCormick of agmarket.net. Let's go ahead and run down those closing numbers brought to you by the folks at Bar Chart. At the close, July corn was up 8.5 at $7.73 even. December new crop down a penny at $7.16 3/4. July soybeans up 29 at $17.69 even. August beans up 17 at $16.79. November beans up 14 1/4 at $15.82 1/4. Soy meal up $9.50 at $4.1720. Soy oil 71 cents lower at $80.25. Chicago wheat down 3.5 at $10.84 3/4. Minneapolis wheat down 11.5. That's at $12.22 1/4. Kansas wheat was down 1.5 at $11.60 3/4. September oats was up 8 3/4 at $6.33 1/2. August live cattle 32 cents lower at $137.20. August feeders were 37 cents higher at $176.02. June lean hogs down 87 cents at $106.97. Pork cutouts down $2.02 at $108.02. Class 3 milk 12 cents higher at $24.42. And that was our ag market recap here on Ag Matters PM. We're going to take a short break and hear from our sponsor, the Iowa Soybean Association and the Soy Checkoff. When we come back, we'll continue our coverage from the World Pork Expo as I talk with Iowa Ag Secretary Mike Naig. This is Ag Matters PM.
Iowa Soybean Association is driven to deliver for Iowa's 40,000 soybean farmers. We're proud to provide objective agronomic research, a helping hand with soil and water stewardship, and timely industry news powered by the Soybean Checkoff. Learn more at iasoybeans.com.
Welcome back to AM/PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Dustin Huffman. Day 2 of the World Pork Expo here in Des Moines. Of course, you can't have an event like this with agriculture without expecting to see Iowa Ag Secretary Mike Naig. He made his way through the grounds to see what was going on as far as technology and what people are talking about for policy, and also share what Iowa is doing to help benefit the hog industry here as well. We had the chance to talk with him about several topics, and here's what he had to say about what's going on at the World Pork Expo. We're here at World Pork Expo 2022 on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, and it's time for our monthly chat with Iowa Ag Secretary Mike Naig. Good grief, it's been how long since you and I have been in the same spot together?
I know, and it's great to be here, right? I mean,
Right.
Isn't this such a great gathering of, I mean, you got people from all over the world here, but certainly it's just the place to be in the pork industry right now. And of course, then there's a little bit we're on the state fairgrounds as well, and I can't help it. I'm like thinking, what if what if there was a day in August that was kind of like this, and it's pretty nice outside?
Yeah, I mean, it's odd because usually Pork Expo, you're already looking at almost triple digits. It always feels like it's always the warmest 3 days in June too, but that's just how it goes.
Yeah.
And of course, we'll get to the fair, I'm sure, in a minute, but I'm sure you're already looking at, is that ice cream booth still open yet or not?
I can't lie. When I'm here, I feel like I've slipped into the fair mode, and I'm already starting to figure out where those great treats are. But yeah, I'll have to stick with bacon and pork.
Well,
today.
there's nothing wrong with that either. We were talking with a few of the people with public policy and everything, and they were saying, pork isn't the biggest part of the economy. It's not even the biggest part of the agriculture economy. I said, yeah, but nobody else in the economy can say they have bacon.
That's right.
That should get everybody's attention in Washington.
Talk about a leg up for the industry.
Yeah.
I think that's a great entree into anybody's life. Is here, try some bacon. Let's talk about the importance of the industry next.
So, what does it mean for Iowa to host this every year?
Yeah. Well, and we had, unfortunately, to take a couple years off, and it's great to be back. What I always like to see, and it's so interesting, even just as I've had a little bit of time to get across the grounds this morning, is you're getting a sense of what's new, what's innovative, what's on people's minds. I mean, so you got a lot of equipment. You're talking a lot about sustainability and managing our lands better. You're also talking about herd health and all those types of things, and of course, foreign animal disease response, prevention, and all those types of things. But I have to tell you that the top of mind issue for folks would be the impact of inflation, the cost of energy, fuel, diesel, all those types of things, and then of course, where are we at in terms of export markets and ensuring that we've got and market access here in the United States, for that matter, into some of the regulations and practices that other states are trying to impose. And so those are the hot topics that are on people's minds.
Yeah, that they are, and it's an interesting situation. We talk about the fact that talking about marketing, for example. I mean, there's so much going on, but yet we haven't seen much in the way of trade deals in the last couple years, months, whatever you want to say. We've got a few framework proposals, and that's great. At least something's moving, but we're really not seeing like the ball's rolling too much in our favor at the moment.
Well, and in the pork industry, and certainly as we look at the state of Iowa, we're the number 2 exporter in terms of the value of food and ag products. California's number 1, we're number 2, and I think that surprises people sometimes, but what I like to say is, why does trade matter to a state like Iowa? Well, when you're number 2, when trade is expanding and when trade is flowing freely, we benefit. When trade is contracting or disrupted, then we suffer consequences of that. And so we're always interested in new trade agreements, new free trade agreements, but also then enforcing existing agreements. There's really 2 parts to that equation.
And you also brought up inflation, and that's an interesting thing. We've been talking with marketers right now, and you're a farmer too. You get the whole thing of, the grain prices, they look great right now. If you've got grain to sell, that's great, but eventually that trickles into the food sector.
Right.
And the thing is, then you're starting to take a chunk out of your own wallet. So where do you find that balance between you're getting some good money for your products, but also now you're spending more money at the store?
Well, you got to remember that we're selling that corn to somebody, and whether there's a value added to it somehow, somewhere. And so when you're driving up the cost of inputs for that customer, for that processor, or that livestock producer, you can go through that for a time, but you can't weather that forever. And so I think we all recognize that commodity prices are at a level that we will need to see them contract a little bit, in order to get things back in line. But I will say this: demand is up around the world for almost everything we're producing, whether it's the protein side or the grain side, and so that's good. I mean, that's a good thing in terms of driving that marketplace. But it is true that when the cost of inputs are up for everybody, that at some point you fear that there's a downturn coming or a cliff coming. And when does that happen, and how quickly, and all those types of things. That's where you're trying to manage risk looking ahead.
Yeah, because we all know economies are cyclical. There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs, and we've weathered them before, but you also take those lessons you learned. I mean, everybody's been saying, it's the 80s. Well, we learned a lot of things in the 80s to prevent that. It's lessons learned. If you're heeding them, you can help weather it and maybe prevent that from happening again.
The fact that there's volatility and that there's a cyclical nature, and that input prices are up because commodity prices are up, it's not a new concept.
Right.
I think what is different is the magnitude of that, right? The swings that can occur, the capital that's at risk. That is different. We're talking a different scale maybe than we had before. But look, the agriculture community they're used to having to manage risk and try to look into the future and determine what they think will happen, and then act accordingly.
That again was Iowa Ag Secretary Mike Naig from the World Pork Expo here in Des Moines. Let's go ahead and take a look at that ag weather outlook. Well, it was a beautiful sunny day here in Des Moines as we got things going on day 2 of the World Pork Expo, and the weather was just perfect, not too hot out there. Temperatures up in that upper 70s, around low 80s, a lot better than the usual upper 90s we seem to get here during this event. Of course, rain is starting to build in the western part of the state here overnight, and we're going to see rain spread across the state. How long is it going to last? Well, let's see what the National Weather Service has in store for the next 24 hours. Well, it was another mostly beautiful day across the state here again today as we started off with some nice temperatures and some sunshine. Now, of course, showers did build in the western part of the state here throughout the afternoon, and we saw highs in the mid-70s to around 80. Now, tonight, we're going to see showers and storms likely across much of the state. Lows will be in the mid-50s to the low 60s. And then tomorrow, we're going to see mostly cloudy skies with some variable chances of showers and thunderstorms statewide. We'll see those highs mainly in the 70s. Now, taking a look at the affiliate weather map for you for tomorrow, Cherokee will see mostly cloudy skies, a chance of showers and thunderstorms, and 77. Shenandoah will have storms likely to start the day, and 78. Des Moines, look for showers and 76. In Waterloo, showers and 75. Albia will see showers and maybe a possibility of a thunderstorm, and 73. And Clinton tomorrow will see mostly cloudy skies, chance of showers, and 72. For more detailed forecasts in your area, tune to your local Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network affiliates. And that's been your Ag Weather Outlook. And just like that, we're at the end of today's episode of Ag Matters PM. You can find all our content online at iowaagnet.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok, and you can find all of our video products as well as past episodes of AM PM on our YouTube channel. You can also find our free Twice Daily Market podcasts available on Amazon, Apple, Google, Spotify, and Podbean. From the World Pork Expo in Des Moines, I'm Dustin Huffman for Riley Smith and Avery Haskell. We thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.